Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square.
And I'm Sam Osterhout, the executive producer at Lincoln Square.
And welcome to the weekly assignment, where Sam and I talk with you about what's coming up on Lincoln Square this week, the latest headlines, and what we can all do to fight back against authoritarianism. Coming up, we will have Jess Piper, who is the executive director of Blue Missouri and the author of the View from Rural Missouri Substack, joining us. She will be talking with us about her writing, Missouri redistricting, the midterms, and rural voters, and so much more. But first, Sam, why don't we talk about the big news of the weekend, which is that Trump's big Iran deal that he signed at Versailles already seems to be on ice after he decided to spend the weekend threatening Iran and its leaders and bombing them again. And he sent in J.D. Vance to try and clean up his mess. So I think we have some footage of J.D. and his press conference where he was doing what he does best, which is lying to us.
When you guys engage in what us millennials might call trash talk, you can't expect the President of the United States not to respond and not to correct the record. So when they say things that aren't true, the President is going to respond to it. I'm going to respond to it. Americans are going to respond to it. When they make threats that aren't rooted in reality, they have to accept that the President of the United States is actually going to set the record straight. That's all that happened. So yes, there was a little bit of threatening, there was a little bit of whining, but at the end of the day, the talks continued and we made great progress.
Nuclear expectors.
There's so much going on here, but it feels like this is a pretty familiar rhetorical pattern. Let's talk about that first, and then let's talk about the deal. But this rhetorical pattern he is attacking the message.
Right.
He's attacking the media. He's attacking the thing. There's nothing of substance related to or pertaining to the Iran deal in what he's saying. And that is always the case. There are no details. Right. There are no facts. It's just, you guys are lying, so Trump is going to be Trump. That says nothing about where we are.
Right. And he can't defend the fact that Trump spends all of his time trash talking, as he said on Twitter.
Millennials say, is all the hip millennials say, trash talking.
Yeah. But I mean, he can't defend the fact that it is certifiably insane to sign a peace deal and then go on social media and threaten to bomb the people you signed the peace deal with again. That's nuts. And because he can't engage in the substance, then he's got to just go on the attack with his smug little face and do the dance that we've seen so many times before.
Yes, and I think that there's a lot here, I think, to unpack, and particularly surrounding this very complicated and really beyond their reach situation that they have put themselves in. The first is that Iran holds every card.
Right.
There's no card that Iran doesn't hold. They are dictating all of the terms. They get up and they walk out. The United States has to do whatever it takes to get them back at the table. We are not coming from a seat of power at all. We have no power. We ostensibly are begging them. And there was, reporting that they did walk out and demand an apology from Trump. That is a baller move, right? The Iranian government, we don't like them. They're not great. The RGC has been terrorizing Iranians and Persians for 50 years. It's
which you know firsthand because you have friends and family over there.
I do. I got a message from some family last week that just said, "How about them Knicks?" which was a heartening thing. But I think it is symbolic of how much strife is happening, that you've got to focus on something positive and outside of yourself. But in this case, Iran can dictate everything. And I wonder about this, and I want to get your take on this too, because, their demand that Israel stop bombing Lebanon seems like a non-starter for Israel, right? But it also feels like a way to draw a wedge between the United States and Israel. And it feels like another form of warfare that the Iranians are succeeding at. How do you think that's going to play out?
You know, the dynamic with what's going on with Israel is fascinating in a horrifying way, because we know that Bibi Netanyahu has been trying to get every president, you know, for decades to bomb Iran, and he finally found one who would do it. And it's also extremely important for Bibi to continue being at war with someone, because it's his status as a wartime president that's put off accountability for both he and his wife in the courts. It helped him postpone elections. He has been doing this since 2023. And so he took full advantage of this war with Iran to start bombing Hezbollah in Lebanon, you know, which is another strategic objective. But what I find fascinating is that because Trump is so desperate to get out of this war, well, still trying to suck us back in by telling Iran over the weekend that he's going to bomb the shit out of them, that aside, he wants to get out because he's bored. Oil prices are high. He knows this is killing Republicans for the midterms. He wants to move on and bomb Cuba or something else. But Bibi is like, no, I have my own agenda here. I need this war to continue because I need to be at war with someone, and I want to continue kicking the crap out of Hezbollah in Lebanon. And so Bibi Israel is learning the lesson that everybody learns, is that you can't trust Trump. Trump will only save Trump. Everything he touches dies, as Rick Wilson says, and there are no allies. And so you even saw J.D. Vance, you know, separately earlier be like, hey, you're only friend. We're your only friends, Israel. What are you going to do about it? You know, so just take the deal, shut up. And of course, between Iran and Israel, everyone is telling Trump no.
Yes. And I hate to frame nation states as brands, but Israel has destroyed their brand. The United States, Trump has destroyed our brand, right? Nobody trusts either of us. And I think the one interesting, hey, Maxine, how you doing? The one interesting take on this is that, you know, everyone thinks that they can control Trump. And that has been the fatal flaw of all politics since 2016, right? This is what has brought us here, is that everyone sees a chump in Trump, and he is a chump. He can get played, and you can stoke him, and you can, you know, play him and all these kinds of things, but eventually he's going to eat your face.
Right.
That's how it works. But, and Bibi is finding that out now.
Yeah. But we should say that Trump can't even control what's going on with his own reflecting pool renovation.
To be fair, that was caused by vandals. Okay.
Right. I mean, this is like really one of the most embarrassing episodes, I think, for the president. And he knows it, which is why, again, he's going on social media and constantly posting about this. But I mean, any scientist will tell you that painting the reflecting pool bright blue is not a solution for an algae bloom, and throwing a bunch of chemicals in afterwards, you know, hydrogen peroxide and chlorine, it's not going to do the trick either. But of course, for Trump to acknowledge science would be admitting a mistake, and that can't happen. So it had to be vandals, and they've arrested like 5 people or something. Including an Olympian, just for like taking photos and like looking at the mess that this guy has made. This is like a repeat. Remember Sandwich Guy who threw, you know, sandwich last summer, like at the National Mall against
real American hero.
Troops? And they tried to arrest him too. We're just doing part 2 of this ridiculous performance art.
And it's, you know, man, I wonder the lengths that the MAGA base will go to wrap themselves around this lie, right? If they're just like, I thought, you know, I saw those algae blooms and I was worried that they fucked it up somehow, but turns out it was just vandals. It is so patently incongruous with any sort of logic or reason, right? You just imagine the secret cabal of Antifa,
Right.
descending.
The Antifa algae bloom.
Yes, descending on the reflecting pool late at night with tiny vials of algae and some sort of catalyst to make it just explode in blooms. It is a dastardly plan that was pulled off precisely, seamlessly. So dumb. It is the dumbest thing. And it is also the perfect metaphor for this entire project.
Absolutely. What a great way for us to celebrate our 250th anniversary with an algae bloom pool that's killing ducks. Awesome.
Is it killing ducks too?
I've seen that there's some concern because, I mean, obviously, throwing bleach in the water is not going to be real helpful for wildlife.
Could it be that RFK was swimming in there and his brainworm suddenly, escaped or reproduced and caused all of this problem? I don't know. Patrick says Trump and his super brain has been defeated by one-cell organisms. Yeah, that's right. His super brain.
That is the line of the day. That's awesome.
That's it. Thanks, Patrick.
Well, why don't we bring Jess Piper in and let's talk with her about what Republicans are doing a little closer to home with her in Missouri and the Midwest, because the damage there is about as devastating as we've seen to the National Mall.
Hi, everybody. So good to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I remember, several years ago, it was, I believe, during the 2022 cycle that you ran for State House in Missouri. And I remember following you on social media, and you were talking about what it was like to run as a Democrat in a rural red state and the hostility that you were facing when you were going to the doors. And in many cases, there's a real safety concern there, because people are not used to Democrats showing their faces in such areas. But you've really turned that into, that experience into the fight to win back rural America and to reach some of these voters who, Republicans clearly take for granted. So can you talk with us about what it's like in Missouri now in 2026 heading into the midterms?
Well, it's hell right now. I mean, it's bad. If you want to see what happens after 2.5 decades of complete Republican rule, come to Missouri. Look around. We're 49th in teacher pay, 48th in teacher funding. Nearly 40% of our schools are running a 4-day week because we can't afford to keep the lights on in our schools. They're defunding our roads. Our hospitals are closing. Under the GOP supermajority, we've lost 19 rural hospitals, right? And so when I go out and knock doors and I talk to people, they'll say, well, the Democrats. What Democrats, friend? We haven't had a statewide elected Democrat in Missouri since 2018. So when we get down to the heart of it, we really do need candidates running. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do. And that's raising money for down ballot candidates because of this. When I ran in 2022, 40% of the seats were uncontested. So when people would look at my area and say, well, you get what you vote for, friend, who'd I have to vote for? There was no one down ballot, which is why I decided to run in the first place. I was a teacher for 16 years, never planned to do this. But I just knew we have to do something different. And we're in such a place now that we're just, struggling to get by. All the time, all these terrible things are happening. They're trying to get rid of our income tax. Our income tax. They want to raise, the Republicans want to raise Missourians' sales tax to 20%. So you can imagine what that's going to do to retirees and people on limited income. So, I mean, it's just a fight tooth and nail. But I will say there is hope because I talk to rural Democrats all the time. I just came back, 2 days ago. That's my part-time job, is going out and speaking to these people and trying to be a cheerleader and saying that, we're here. Rural Democrats have always been here. That's who we were. We were prairie progressives, dirt road Democrats. We need to get back to our roots and kick out the people who are causing all the harm to our communities and our state.
Yeah, I I grew up in Kansas, so I won't hold it against you
Yeah.
that you're from Missouri.
Border
But
war.
I know, but we can make friends for now. But I remember my small town high school was a really great high school to go
Yeah.
to. It was a wonderful place to grow up. And we had a sort of mix of, center right and some center left. I went to KU and Lawrence, which was as left as you can possibly get. And there were cities in the or school districts in the border, in Olathe and on the Missouri side, and that did wonderful, and that still do wonderful. But the rural areas started to really deteriorate.
Yeah.
And I wonder if voters, if you mentioned they blame the Democrats, and like, what Democrats are you talking about? Do you find that they're starting to piece or connect the dots here?
Yeah, I mean, they're in a lot of pain. I'm in ag country. I live in a town of 480 people on the Iowa border. We're struggling. My daughter, when you were talking about the schools, her first day of sixth grade, she came home with a textbook that was her, social studies book, and it was old enough to vote. Right. It didn't have a spine. It had tape all the way around it. And so that's where we are. So when I do knock doors, in general, people are talking about the pain we're all experiencing. We don't have access to healthcare. I know a lot of the roads in my town aren't paved, so it's really hard to scoop the snow off. We don't have any sidewalks. The kids at the local school, we don't have a track. So they don't learn to run track until they go to somebody else's school and they're running on a track. So unless you're coming down and trying to talk about a specific candidate, we all agree at the door. Nobody wants to send their taxpayer money to private religious schools our kids don't have access to. What are you talking about, right? We all know we need roads, and we need healthcare, and we need police and fire protection. And these things are being cut and devastated and just pulled out of the budget. So we all agree until it comes down to that one thing. And when I knock doors, this is what happened to me the whole time. They'd say, "Man, I love everything you're saying. Are you a Republican or a Democrat?" And I'd say, "I'm a Democrat." And this will shock most people the first time they hear it. They'd say, "Well, I can't vote for you because I'm a Christian." And so when you realize that people are voting according to Christian nationalism, because I was born and raised a Southern Baptist, I know exactly what they're talking about, right? They're getting it from their pulpit 3 times a week. You cannot be a Democrat. You cannot vote for progressive candidates because they believe in abortion. And that's the one issue, that and guns. But really, it's come down to abortion. And that's why it's so important that we have local candidates on local doors, because you talk to me about abortion. Of course, I believe a woman has the right to bodily autonomy, but call me a baby killer. I've got 5 kids and 4 grandkids. I'm populating all of Northwest Missouri myself, right? They want to talk about me being a gun grabber. My entire inheritance from my dad was guns. I don't want your guns. I got my own, right? So this is why we have local people talking to their neighbors, because it's really hard to point at me and call me names when I taught your kid. I live up the street from you, right? All of our kids go to North Nottoway. What are you talking about? So this is why that's so important. But really, I think that people don't understand Midwest and Southern politics. It is intimately tied with religion.
Yeah. I want to get into how this happened, because a couple decades ago, Missouri was like the ultimate swing state. That's where, you would have the presidential debates, because, the presidential election would be won or lost, by Bill Clinton or George W. Bush in Missouri. And now you are just as red as it comes. And we've seen other states that have shifted, in the Midwest as well. I spent 10 years in Iowa. That's where I went to college. And that state's gone very far red. And when you talk with people, it really has become such a cultural thing with people. I'm a Christian. If you're a good person, you're pro-life and you vote Republican, even if, those people are cutting my kids' schools and, I can't drive on my roads anymore. How did they get the chokehold on politics? And how did that happen? And, what does that mean for us going forward in this country?
It really means that we need to be in our communities. Like I said, I was born and raised in that church. My church didn't have a stance on abortion until well after Roe, around 78 or 79. And that's because the Republicans figured out something really quickly. Abortion is a wedge issue. And if we create this wedge issue, we can have decades of people voting against their self-interest because of this one issue. Now, I knew lots of people who needed abortion, who needed miscarriage care, all those things. They still see themselves as pro-life. And so it's propaganda. It's propaganda that they see day in and day out. You have to remember that we're in places that have, news deserts. We see a huge dismantling of local journalism. My local paper used to be daily. Now it's weekly, and now it's struggling. And the other papers have closed. I live in a place where I cannot have a newspaper delivered to me. And I know a lot of people, don't read newspapers anymore. They're getting it online. But where are they getting it? Right? Where are they getting it? They're getting it on Facebook. And I know this because, my family is MAGA. They get their news from Facebook. They get it from YouTube. And it's absolutely wild stuff. Missouri is the home of Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh was a precursor to Fox News and to everything we see now. And a lot of folks think, well, people are watching and listening to the news 24 hours a day. They must be, really informed. No, they're less informed. They're more confused, and they're numb, and they're tired, and they're sick of it. And so that's where all this information comes from. But progressives and Democrats can learn something from the church. In our small towns, we're not getting together anymore. There's no union halls anymore. The Walmart effect has come in and taken over my town. So, I've got a couple of places where I can buy a vape pen, but there's no place to buy a gallon of milk. I've got to go 25 miles to buy a gallon of milk, right? We don't have those gathering spaces. So I'm not able to talk to my neighbors organically. And that's where Democrats and progressives are falling behind, where conservatives and evangelicals 3 times a week, friend, Wednesday night, Sunday morning and Sunday night, they are coming together and they are getting that message. We have to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah, my stepdad was made a big career out of being a reporter at our hometown paper, the Hutch News. And Hutch News was purchased by a VC, and recently they published several articles about Hutchinson, but it was Hutchinson, Minnesota. They didn't even check which city it was because it all comes out of an aggregator. Nobody's in state. There are no reporters in the newsroom. It is atrocious. And when you have that, then what fills the gap is church. Anywhere there's people gather, like you said, church, or sheer conjecture and gossip based on what you read on social media. It's toxic. It's a toxic brew.
Can you talk with us a little bit about your organization, Blue Missouri? I know you've raised over $500,000 for state candidates since 2017. Talk to us about the impact there and where you're heading with the midterms.
So, like I said, there were 44% of the seats that were uncontested when I ran. And now this year we only have 2% uncontested. So we have made huge gains and with my organization, but also, the Missouri Democratic Party, they're out there trying to get candidates all the time. The problem is you don't have money for those candidates, right? The state party doesn't have money for the candidates. The national party sure isn't sending money into Missouri because they look at us and they go, it's too red. Why would we compete there? Well, then the state parties do the same thing in districts like mine. My district that I ran in hasn't elected a Democrat in 32 years. They have never elected a woman. It's very difficult to get someone to run. And you know what? No one is running for state rep this term. But Blue Missouri decided this. We flip everything on its head. You know how a lot of organizations, most organizations, I would say, is they put the money in the flippable races, the ones they can win. And we're like, how do you know it's flippable? How do you know what can win? How do we know when we haven't had a candidate in 20 years down in the boot hill? How do we know someone can't win? And so we start from the bottom. So we start with the candidates who have raised the least. And these are always candidates in the reddest, most rural, most difficult races. And we come in and with our donors, and it looks like we're going to have around $300,000 to give to down ballot Democrats in Missouri, which makes us the biggest donor to Democratic candidates in the entire state. We give more than the party does, right? That's because people believe in the mission. We give these people money. We give them $5,000, $7,000, and that raises the funding floor. So that means nobody running for state ledge in the state has less than $7,000. They buy literature. They buy gas because a lot of them are traveling hundreds of miles because these districts are massive because they're rural. They can buy signs. They can buy ad time. They can buy billboards. And I do want to say something because you hear from a lot of strategists who will say, don't waste your money on signs. Signs don't vote. Not in rural spaces because I put out these signs and I live in a town of 480 people. Every person that drives by my little farm says, oh my gosh, I can be pro-education. I can be pro-worker. I can be pro-healthcare, including for women, right? It's okay. And I'm safe here because I see that somebody else believes the way that I do. And so we get them this money. And you know what has happened so far? We really haven't seen a whole lot of races being able to flip because we've been at it about a decade, a little less than a decade. But what we have seen is gaining 10 points or 15 points in a place where nobody had competed for decades. We've seen us be able to strike down our abortion ban. We overturned it. We overturned right to work. We have recreational weed in Missouri because we are putting these things on the ballot, and people, when we talk to them, know I can go out and vote for this stuff. So it makes a huge impact to donate to people that nobody else will donate to. And it's really immoral. I will say this, to ask people to run and stick their neck out in a place where they could get fired from their job, ostracized from their church, and then not to fund them. I mean, that's terribly immoral. So that's what we do at Blue Missouri.
Well, I know that. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
Sam.
you go ahead.
I was going to say, I know that Missouri is, I think, one of a half dozen states that redrew its congressional map this year. A lot of red states are doing this. Can you talk with us about what kind of impact that's going to have, not just for congressional races, but did they also redo your legislative maps as well?
So Missouri is one of the states where we didn't, unlike California, unlike Virginia, they put it on the ballot and let their citizens vote whether they wanted these maps. Missouri did not do that. They gerrymandered us, and they picked a seat in Kansas City where we have had a Black congressman for 2 decades, and they have taken his small little district that encompassed Kansas City and pulled it out wide to the east side of the state to pull in a whole bunch of white rural voters trying to water down his district. So it's dangerous what they're doing. But I will say this, and Sam would know this because he's from Kansas. Just because you gerrymander a seat doesn't mean it'll win. And we can look at places like Kansas with Sharice Davids, who has won twice in a gerrymandered district, right? You know what she did? She got out and worked. She got out and talked to the folks. She knocked the doors and did the work, and she won. It can be done. And people in Missouri, I know people look at us and say, we're so red. Friends, we weren't that red. We were so uncontested. We just didn't contest these races. Look at our ballot initiatives and realize we're a state where we had an abortion ban and legalized weed. Okay. So none of these things make sense. It's because we're not that red. It's because we didn't have people to vote for. Like I said, I haven't been able to vote in a county-wide election in a decade because I have never had a Democrat to run countywide. Not sheriff, not dog catcher, not anything. And so once we break into at least running, then we can see what we're working with. And that's where we are right now at this point in Missouri. I think the gerrymander is making people angry. We voted 2 years ago to raise the minimum wage and also give workers earned sick time. They took it away from us. We voted 58% for it, and in one vote, they took it away from us. My neighbor is a Republican. Now, she doesn't vote for Trump, but she's a Republican. She's so mad she can't see straight because of what they did. She's voting for Democrats because of what they've done. They have overplayed their cards. They are over their skis. They are in a mess. And I have a congressional seat that is going to be, up for grabs. And I have 2 congressional candidates that are knocking doors saying, well, I'm going to do what Trump wants me to do. And I said, friend, I hope you keep that message. I hope you keep knocking doors and telling them you're going to do what Trump wants you to do, because he's unpopular. You go talk to a farmer who can't get any access to fertilizer. You get to a farmer who has a year's worth of soybeans in his bins, and you tell him how much you're going to follow Trump's, whatever he's doing, his craziness. See how far that gets you.
Yeah, the Kansans and Missourians feel like they are aggressively antagonistic and skeptical, right? And
Yes.
I think that's, even in the Dust Bowl, it took so much pleading for farmers to just grow windrows
Right.
and cover crop,
Right.
because they were like, who is this guy telling me this? Right? I don't know you. It is a skepticism of all things external and outside, and I think that the Republicans have had know this, and they know that they can stoke divide really easily by claiming somebody else is out to get them, or all of these things. And when you don't have Democrats face to face with the community, then they believe it.
Right.
You gotta run.
I knocked a lot of doors, and people would tell me, I don't think I've ever seen a Democrat in real life. And I'm like, friend, your neighbor two doors down is a Democrat, but she doesn't say anything. She doesn't put out signs because she's scared to do so. Now, me, I'm not scared anymore. And, and a lot of my neighbors aren't either. 4 years ago, when I started doing this, I went to a little town called Cameron, Missouri. There's about 9,000 people in the town. And I met with some folks who were worried about their school board because it was being overtaken by extremists. They wanted to meet me in the basement of the church, and they didn't park their cars outside because they were worried about people seeing them. I just went back to Cameron, Missouri about 6 weeks ago. There were over 100 people. There were so many people, it ended up being standing room only, and they were out in the hallway. They had candidates, and they all parked in front of the building, and everyone knew what they were doing because they advertised it. 4 years difference. That's what I'm seeing, and that's what's given me tons of hope.
So I'm really fascinated by the idea that voters in Missouri and in other red states, but specifically in Missouri, you have voted for these progressive policies at the ballot box. I know you had Medicaid expansion, minimum wage, marijuana, as you said, and yet the Democratic brand does still seem to be toxic to some degree in the state. So what's the most effective messaging there for people who like these ideas that, the Democratic Party endorses, but they just can't stand the Democratic Party itself, and they think that it's just full of godless people who want to force you into abortion?
Well, again, that's why you need a local candidate. So you recognize the person and you know that you're talking to, a real person. And I will say that a lot of the things that you hear in bigger cities or whatever, that message may not work in rural spaces. But I always fall back on the thing that there's 3 things basically that I think Democrats want. They want you happy, healthy, and educated. I mean, there you go. Everything falls underneath that, right? And that's what I want for my community. And so when we get down to the basics and tell them what the platform is, I've never knocked a door, and I knocked thousands in rural Missouri. I never knocked a door and someone asked me about a trans kid. Never. I never knocked a door and someone asked me about a bathroom. These things are at the national level don't seep down very well because that's not what anyone cares about. And a lot of the folks, when you talk to them face to face, they know a trans kid and they want them to be okay. They know gay kids and they want them to be okay. And they know their neighbor is a single mom who works a job and she needs access to SNAP and her kids need access to Medicaid. And that's why it has to be super personal, super local. That's the only way, friends, that we come back is having someone talk to you that you know, because otherwise it doesn't sink through. It just doesn't, because we do come across as we hate God, we hate the country, you hate the flag. No, I'm from a military family, right? What are you talking about? But I still believe that people should have the right to make their own decisions. And that's a huge one for conservatives is this. I tell them all the time, the government is overreaching. They are bringing a data center to my county. And I don't know one single person who is on board with a data center, not a Republican, not an independent, not a Democrat. They're doing it anyway. If the Democrats would think about this, they would jump on this in a second and say, we stand with local regulations. We stand with local ideas. If you don't want a data center in your backyard, you have the right to say no. If you need a certain treatment for your body, you should have the right to make that decision between you and your doctor, not a lawmaker, right? They shouldn't be able to put a huge hog barn with 10,000 hogs behind my house. I ought to have a say in that. And when I talk to conservatives, I always tell them the same thing. Your GOP lawmakers are overreaching into your life, into your bedroom, your classroom, into your pocketbook. Remind them of that. And then, start connecting the dots.
Jess, I really appreciate you taking so much time to talk with us. This has been great. Can you tell us the best way that people can find what you do at Blue Missouri and your work on Substack?
Sure. So on Substack, I'm The View from rural Missouri. I just happen to be the .1 rural newsletter in the country. I think there may be 3 of us, so don't get too excited. And then you can go to bluemissouri.org. Like I said, we're pushing $300,000 to give to down ballot Democratic candidates in this state, and it makes a huge difference. And so either of those places, you can just look me up online, Jess Piper. I show up pretty much everywhere except for Twitter. I did ditch that a year ago.
Jess, you're a breath of fresh air, and it's so good to talk to somebody from my part of the country. And your humbleness sounds very familiar to my ear.
I was just in Butler County. I was just over there a couple days ago, and it's so fun. You go into these rural spaces. I was in a town called Augusta, and I drove into town, and they have an old theater, and the marquee, it says Jess Piper, Dirt Road Democrat. It's like, oh my
amazing.
God. I know. So, just remember, rural folks are the same as everybody else. They're worth fighting for. If we come back to rural spaces, we can win. I promise. This is our way out. And I appreciate you guys letting me come and speak today. Thank you.
Love to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got to have more Missourians and Kansans and maybe not Oklahomans. That's just a personal thing.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
We'll draw the line there. Got it.
All right. The red clay I can't handle.
Nice. It's also Mark Wayne Mullen. So, yeah.
Oh, that's true. That is true. Yeah, they're lost. I have family from Oklahoma. So.
Well, coming up this week, Sam, we've got some really interesting guests. Let's go ahead and get into it. So we've got Juliette Kayyem, who is a former DHS official under Obama. She's a national security expert. So she'll be on with Frank Figluzzi this afternoon, which should be a fascinating conversation.
She's one of those, Stewart always says, he's like, I love this person's writing because I never know what it's going to say. And she is always, anytime we have her on, we haven't had her on in a while, but I'm surprised. Her message, she's an expert. And this is our, what we really try to do is platform experts. And she is so good. I'm very excited for that one. Yeah.
Coming up later in the week, we'll be airing this one over the weekend on Saturday. Brian Datesman on his show, History of the Presence. He will have on Hanan Khashoggi, who is the widow of Khashoggi, the Washington Post columnist who was, of course, murdered in Saudi Arabia. You know, Brian just has a gift for getting fascinating guests, and he asks fascinating questions. And so this is really a must watch because you will not get to see this anywhere else.
No. He texts me. He's like, "Hey Sam, I just booked so and so," and I'm like, how did you do this? The bookings he gets are astonishing. I'm really looking forward to this. And by the way, his questions are, he's a really incredible interviewer. Right? If you haven't listened or watched this show, you really ought to go check it out.
Absolutely. We also have former U.S. Attorney Andrew Weissman will be on 6 Questions with Stephen Beschloss on Wednesday. Stephen, this will be his 4th show. This is our newest show on Lincoln Square. And Stephen is a really thoughtful interviewer, but I think what's really fun is that he shows that you can have a really deep conversation with someone, but it doesn't have to be a 3-hour long Joe Rogan style podcast. I mean, it can be the kind of thing that you will listen to when you're mowing your lawn over the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. The best time to listen to podcasts, in my opinion. It's like, you know, why is Dad always wanting to mow the lawn? Podcasts. That's why.
It sounds like you had a great Father's Day.
Yeah. It was a good Father's Day. I hope everyone else got to go to a brewery or take a hike or watch a game or some dad thing out there, because it's, you know, weekends like that I think are curative, and we really need to be human again as we see all of this nonsense, you know, in Washington and Iran and the reflecting pool and all of this crazy. And I know that our audience, you guys are I learned things from you from the chat. You guys are as in tune as we are. And I think it's important that we come together and celebrate the things that we can celebrate. So for that reason, a Father's Day is an important thing. And I don't know, do something special next weekend too. Why not?
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on our 250th anniversary, and we're going to have a lot more for you on that here in Lincoln Square. But just want to put it out there that even though we're seeing how Trump has tried to hijack this for his own interest, and I'm sure his own business interests as well, but he doesn't own our history. He doesn't get to control how we celebrate the 4th of July. I mean, that's the entire point, right, of the founding of our country. We told England that you don't have the right to tell us what to do. So we're going to try this whole new thing called democracy. And, you know, it's up to all of us to celebrate what really does make our country. And, you know, honestly, being sentimental, it's people like you in our audience that tune in, that you write comments about our shows. You tell us if you like a column that we publish. You're the people that we do this for. And so, you know, if you haven't subscribed already, please do, because I think you're going to want to be with us for this 250th anniversary celebration.
I mean, and beyond. Like, look, this is a consequential year. November, I'm trying not to think about it. It's hard for us because we have to cover it. We talked to, you know, I'm jumping on a call with a farmer from Iowa who's a Democratic strategist as well in a couple of minutes. And, you know, we're talking about the midterms every second. But it's not just the midterms. We have a presidential election coming up, and it's going to happen quick. Right. And we have all the shit that we have to cover in between. Excuse my French, but we're here for it, and you're here for it. And you're why we do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always like to give you a weekly assignment, something that we all can do concretely to fight back, because, you know, we all are in this together. And so this week, if you click on this code, it will take you to your U.S. senator, and you can tell them don't confirm Todd Blanche as Attorney General. I mean, this is someone who has no business in this job. He's Trump's personal attorney. He still acts like he's Trump's personal attorney. He was the one who flew down to talk with Ghislaine Maxwell last year and then put her in that cushy, club-fed facility where she reportedly gets to do yoga and, basically treated as a spa after being convicted of sex trafficking. This is a guy who shouldn't be anywhere near the halls of power. And, even if you have a Republican senator, they should know that you don't approve of this, because trust me, you're not alone. Even Republicans know that Todd Blanche is not qualified.
Yeah. And look, there's been a downward slide of our institutions and, removal of all expertise. We don't have to continue that slide. It doesn't have to keep going, right? We can and should stop that slide.
Yeah. And let's hand Trump another loss here. I mean, he's very unpopular. If you tune into Behind the Numbers with Rick and Andrew Wilson, you know how bad Trump's numbers are. He does not have a lot of political capital, and a lot of Republicans are looking at November and they're shaking in their boots. It's not a done deal that Todd Blanche is going to be the next Attorney General.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Well, Sam, it's been fun as always. I realized very late in the program that we're kind of dressed the same. So it's
a little matchy.
Yeah. So
That's
sorry for all of you who had to witness that at home, but that's just Sam and I have worked together for so long that we're even dressed alike.
Yeah, we finished each other's wardrobes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But thank you for being here. Such a great conversation. Such a great conversation with Jess Piper. You should definitely check out her work, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.